probably spend about 3 hours just looking at each one of you and telling you why you're special, because everybody here has a connection with the library or with me and my family. And I certainly appreciate everybody being here today. We're going to begin our program with the flag salutes. The Girl Scout Cadet Troop 180 will lead us in the pledge to the American flag, and they will do the pledge to the Girl Scout flag. And I would like to thank Dorothy Wood for donating the American flag to us. Reverend Roy Lee of the Monon United Methodist Church will lead us in the invocation.
Let us pray. Dear God in heaven, we have gathered as a community of interested persons to celebrate the renewal of this building. We celebrate the vision of our forerunners for their creation of this library building. We celebrate the vision of our leadership today to see greater potential in the future possibilities of this library. We celebrate the gifts of planning and this building's renewal by your community servants. We celebrate the gifts of construction which finalize the planning skills. And we celebrate the gifts of understanding library functions which will now care for the creative possibilities of this building. We celebrate the persons who will use the services offered by this building. Dear God, come now and share this wonderful moment. Make this moment beginning anew in this remodeled building, a moment which will radiate into the coming days, months, and years as a moment of hope and joy. May the time come whenever generations will say at this beginning, it was a wonderful gift they gave to us. We are thankful for their love and vision to us. All these words we offer in praise to you. Amen.
Well, now I'm very happy to be able to make some introductions for people that are very important to the library and certainly very important to me. Joe is going to help me with a few little things as we go along. First of all, we have our Library Board of Trustees. And I'd like, as I call your name, I'd like each one of you to come up here. The president of the library board is Sharon Levine. She's appointed by the North White School Board, and this is her second term. And she's been president practically the whole time that she's been on the board. She began as a community representative to our long-range planning committee, and somehow she ended up on the board. Next, Ray Houston. Raymond Houston is our vice president. He's appointed by the town board of Monon, and this is his second term. We're very glad to have him on board. The secretary of the library board is Jean Owens. Jean is the teacher at Francisville. She lives in Monon, and she is appointed by the North White Corporation. This is her first term. Our treasurer is Carolyn Brown. Carolyn has begun her second term, and she was appointed by the county commissioner. Linda Morris is a member of the board. She's in her third term as a board member. She's appointed by the North White School Corporation. Jeffrey Hard is a teacher at West Central. This is his first term, and he's appointed by the county council. And last but not least is Betty Del Vecchio. She is appointed by the Township Advisory Board. She's in her second term as library trustee. These little mugs that they have all say Library Trustee Building for the Future. Then we have one more mug left to give to Dr. Ken Smith. He is presently on the board, but he served from 1976 to the end of 1993. Wanda was not able to be here today. She thought she'd rather go to Branson, Missouri, and I'll never understand that. And our attorney for the leasing corporation was John Block of Monticello, so we'd like him to stand up and look at that here. Okay, thank you very much, all of you. Well, our building was built by Hamstra Builders of Wheatfield. I know there's one person here from Hamstra, and that is our painter, Andy. Where are you, Andy? I know I saw you. All right. Another very important person in the construction was Jack Kellogg. He was clerk of the works. I'll stand up. Well, now you may ask, what does the clerk of the works do? Well, the clerk of the works represents the library board, and it's supposed to keep his eye on the construction team and see that they do what they're supposed to do in the manner that they're supposed to do it, according to the architect. I think sometimes the workers thought they were supposed to keep their eye on Jack. Anyway, we had a good time. I would say that we certainly, well, when we went into the construction program, I don't think I quite realized that you not only build a building, you also build a lot of relationships. And you may even find that the relationships that you have with the board and your staff, there's some changes in those relationships. We felt we had a good relationship with the Hamstra workers. We appreciated their work. They were certainly, Olive and I said, well, we hardly heard any bad language from them, and I know things didn't always go perfectly, so we did appreciate them. And I hope that the relationships that we have all built as we work through this project will last as long as this building does. I would also like to announce our financial advisor that helped us with the bond issue was H.J. Umblaw and Associates from Plymouth. I don't believe there's anyone here, but they did send us a beautiful plant, which is upstairs. Also want to introduce our staff members. Probably a lot of you have already met our new director, Jo Minnie. Jo comes to us from Flora. She began at the 1st of July, and she got in on some of the construction headaches. I mean, we couldn't let her all have all just the good times. So. Also, Nancy Harvey is a fairly new member of our staff. Nancy, her main responsibility is working with the patrons upstairs at circulation. Peggy Horton is back there videoing. She is our youth services librarian. Amy McWilliams is our bookkeeper. She wasn't able to be here today. I am the former director, the tired and retired director, Marjorie Williams was not able to be here today. She works chiefly with the circulation and people at the desk. We're very happy to have Julia Woodcock. Julia is really a kind of a bright spot in our day. She works almost every day after school and part of the time on Saturdays. Then Laura Young is a new member of the staff. She now is our custodian. So we're grateful for all the work that has gone, that these girls do for us every day. And I would also like to point out we have a couple of dearly loved former staff members here. We still consider them part of the family because whenever we get together in a bunch, we think we have to have them, and that is always fine. Well, I'm almost done so that Steve can speak. When we decided to really get down to the final plans for our open house, I thought if Steve could get it into his schedule, I'd really like for him to be here today. He is a graduate of North White, and I think it's really wonderful to see that someone from our little town of Monon can operate on the national scene. Now, you know, Steve was in my son's class in high school, but I didn't really know Steve. So I have no idea whether he ever darkened the doorstep of this library or any other. Surely somewhere in his career he received some help from the library. At least I certainly hope so. So maybe he could tell us something about that. I don't know. I really probably should have had Mr. Clevenger make the introduction. He knows Steve pretty well, and not terribly long ago in the North White newsletter, he wrote a very nice piece about Steve. And I thought, that's Steve, he must be all right. Maybe you should get him on your publicity staff. Well, without further ado, or the introduction is going to be longer than the speech, we will have Steve Greer.
Actually, Pat, I will admit that it's preferable to have someone introduce me who doesn't know me. I guess the further I go in my career, the payoff to John Clevenger will only arise. No, John, I'm just kidding. Let me introduce someone here that's with me today. Is my director of the Monticello Congressional Office, Jan Faker. Where's Jan? So everybody can see her. I tell you, if you need to, Jan is a wonderful lady, and if any of you ever need anything, please get in touch with her. It is truly so wonderful whenever I have the opportunity, whether it's going to Buffalo, the elementary school, or going to the Reynolds Elementary School, or even going up to high school, or coming to an event like this, whenever I can truly come back home, it's exciting for me. I mean, I have made so many speeches and talks and been on so many different programs that when I can come home and be with people who I know and who have known me since I was so very small, playing in your backyard even, Sharon, when I was in the first grade, in diapers even. No, I was going to go back too far here. I tell you, it does get funny when people then now want to identify closely with me. I'll never forget the one gentleman said, "I remember you. You're the little boy that ran over to the elevator and I had to get you, and you in your diapers and you crapped all over me." Appreciate you sharing that with me. Right? Wow. Let me share with you though some interesting actually lessons and observations that I see when I leave the community here and I go out to Washington and I deal with that city out there, which is unlike any other I've ever seen. You see, the nation's agenda really gets driven by the concerns, the desires, and the emotion of the big cities, the big urban centers. And sometimes lost in all of that are the concerns of rural America and the small towns, and the small town atmosphere. I submit that the spirit of America can be measured by the spirit of her small towns. And when I can stand here in Monon and truly in compliment to all of you and to the board in the pursuit of excellence, that's what this is. The pursuit of excellence been measured in the atmosphere of the small towns. It's the can-do spirit. So all this money gets funneled into the big cities, and I tell you what, they have their hands out all the time. They're always out there lobbying for it. You know, I don't have the small towns of America out there saying, I want, I want, I want. Tell you what, folks, I'm proud. I'm really proud of you. I'm proud to represent a rural district in Washington, D.C. because of our heritage. You know, we take a lot of all this for granted. Our heritage really is based on always having done more with less. And in that pursuit of excellence is truly the compliment. So here in the small town, we're not saying we're comfortable. We're saying we want to provide and we can do better. So even here in Monon, when you take on a project like this, you say, yes, we believe and value education. So really, I guess with the pursuit of excellence, I could call it today the investment in excellence. It's really a pleasure also for me to see John Clevenger. John is an individual who has had an impact on a lot of people's lives for which he probably doesn't understand nor realize. John could have left this community and he would have been an excellent professor at any college, but he chose to stay at the high school level. And I can tell you, there are a lot of teachers for which I remember and professors, but there are two who are distinctly in my memory. And see, John Clevenger caught me at a right time. He caught me at a time when I was 16 years old as a senior in high school. And he challenged me. He challenged me. I wasn't happy at the time John challenged me. I didn't like it at the time. But he challenged me to think, not to accept the things the way they are or accept even how they're written, but how do you feel about it? How do you interpret it? And it was really the first time that I had been challenged. You see, that I believe that the utility of reading and writing is really the art of communicating the thoughts of our minds, which is really one of the basic and probably one of the world's greatest inventions, for which we take for granted. You just stop and think about it, folks. Where would we be if we couldn't read or write? Whether it is the Bible, whether it's history, economics, math, science, commerce, it is the most basic utility that separates us as a civilized society from uncivilized societies in the world. You know, I can, when you asked about libraries, the library that I spent so much time was the library in Francisville. And I can remember it as a young man, a little boy. Even before I could read and understand, I loved the encyclopedia. Even to today, this is what's so crazy. You want me on your side in Trivial Pursuit. Because I love to read the encyclopedia. And I am rereading the encyclopedia right now. See, I don't have a television out in Washington. I just have a radio in my apartment, and I'm now on the letter C. I'm reading the encyclopedia. So when I finish, come get me for a partner. But I'll tell you, it's just really, it's fascinating. So the little things that you had even as a child, you can take with us, you know that. And it makes it pretty exciting. So I really believe that the pursuit of knowledge and the understanding, coupled with the ability to convey, really leads to success. John Goss sitting there nodding his head a little bit. He understands that as an attorney. And even with John maybe doesn't have all the facts on his side, if he has the greatest understanding of the case, he can win. Because he also has the ability to convey. So if he walks in there with a greater understanding in the courtroom, he's got the potentiality of winning. Let me also submit to you that when you leave this community and you go out and you become a member of Congress or in the Senate or any leadership position out in Washington, you're in a very unique position. And the position I'll submit to you is that it's history for which we deal with. The town of Washington, D.C. is a magnificent town. It has a tremendous amount of reverence for the past and the traditions and a lot of sacrifices from a lot of people. But, ladies and gentlemen, I'll submit to you that it is very easy to pick up a book and read history. It's difficult to live history. But the real challenge is to successfully create history. Think of it. That's what we try to do, is to successfully create history. And that is a tremendous challenge. You know, I guess being someone who loves history and who loves to read about history, I'll never forget, and believe me folks, when I jump into this, politics, we learn about this. It's not so much when you get into the Congress and the Senate. They love to write about it's Republicans versus Democrats and all that kind of stuff. You know what it's about, folks? It's about ideology. That's what it's about. You see, liberal Democrats don't like to talk about conservative Democrats, and Republicans don't like to talk about liberal Republicans. It's amazing. It's ideology which controls. So when I first go out to Washington, and we have a new administration, it was interesting how often the word new was used on things for which I had seen before. And it really got me, and I lost it today, when in the Armed Services Committee, Les Aspin, then Secretary of Defense, comes in to deliver to us the President's new strategy for national security objectives. And when I looked at them, I could only shake my head. And I told Les Aspin, I said, sir, I have a message for you to give to the President. If he never reads history, then everything is new. Right? Let me close, because we're at an interesting time. We're at an interesting time in our country, because there appears to be on the forefront of a shift of power in Washington based on ideology. Now, I'll tell you what, this is an interesting time to be out there. It's an interesting time because there are a lot of people out there. You may have 10,000 organizations and associations that try to lobby for something. Okay? Now, there are people that when they didn't think they needed you, they ignored you. But now all of a sudden there seems to be this shift of ideology. They want to throw their arms around you. Right? That's the kind of town and atmosphere Washington is. I can best describe Washington by telling you a story. We're on the present tone and tenor of that town. We're on the eve of Halloween. There was this individual who wanted to go to a Halloween party. They run a little late, and they're dressed up as the devil. So they hop in their car, and they're roaring down the road in their car. And pretty soon, all of a sudden, they start to have car trouble. Chugging. They pull over to the side. There's a telephone. The telephone is right next to a church. And in the church, they're having a revival. Oh, my gosh, what are they doing? They're in the hallways, and they're hooping, they're hollering, and they're waving their arms. They're having a great time in the revival. And it's stormy outside, and the rains pick up, and the thunder, and the lightning. And the individual dressed up as a devil goes over to the phone box, picks up the telephone. Just that time, wham! A bolt of lightning hits the church, jumps over to the phone box, hits the receiver, takes the devil, throws him into the back door of the church. Now all the people are looking, oh my God, the devil himself has been delivered to the back door of the church. People are going out the windows, the doors, boom, they escape. There happens to be one man sitting on the back pew, for which we all recognize perhaps. He was asleep, you see, during the revival. And when he wakes up, he looks, and he sees that the devil is between himself and the door. And he says, hey, Bub, between you and me, secretly, I've always been on your side. That's kind of the way it is in Washington at the moment. Let me conclude by extending a compliment to all of you, and especially those who exercise the leadership that it takes to put together a project like this, and also just a deep appreciation to your pursuit and investment in excellence. God bless you.
Thank you, Steve. Well, guys, I typed this program, but I can't read it. I skipped right over our architect, Harry Moeller. H.L. Moeller and Associates were our architect. They're located in Lafayette. And Harry might like to say a word. We do have a few gifts that we would like to announce. I'm starting out with a gift from Paul and Karen Whalen. They were not able to be here today. This gift was a total surprise. Karen teaches up at West Central. She also works, I believe, a night or two a week at the Monticello Public Library. Her husband is associated with Wabash Valley, I believe the office in Monticello. She came in one day and said, we enjoy doing glass etchings and we would like to create something for your library. Well, I mean, I wasn't acquainted with her or anything, and so we were just thrilled. Well, she has done some nursery rhyme pictures in glass, and these are later going to be mounted in the children's department, the little window as you go in the door. And we now have them on display on the table back there. They're laying on some black felt so that you can get a good look at them. And we hope you will all go back there and take a look at these. Certainly was a wonderful gift right out of the room. Now for the next presentation, these people hardly need an introduction. I think most everybody from this area knows that Ms. Ethel Richardson was a librarian here for just a few years. If you look on the back, you will see her name listed. I'm sure that she influenced countless lives in Monon in a wonderful way. I know when I first moved here, the first place I came to was the library. Well, fortunately, I lived on the right side of the road out in the country, so I was in Monon Township and I could use the library. So Miss Ethel was one of the first persons that I met, and she certainly made my moving to Monon a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. And her family wanted to do something for our library in her memory. And I believe we have someone from the family, Kay Richardson, that is going to tell us about it.
We have a plaque and an oak rocking chair that we would like to present in honor of our Aunt Ethel. On behalf of my parents, Dale and Ethel Richardson, and my brothers, Jim and Dale, and my sister Geraldine and myself and our families. I used to work a lot of summers here with Aunt Ethel. This is my second home. And we used to sit afternoons on end and take work. We would just knock out the back wall and move the library to the alley. Wouldn't it be great? And I know she would be so pleased if she could be here today and see what the board has done.
We have two lovely rocking chairs, one for an adult in the back part and one for a child, and they made it possible for us to have these rocking chairs. Maybe the Richardsons would like to stand up. Then I would like to have my good friend and former co-worker, Nancy Sanders, and her husband Wayne come up. Shall I turn the mic around to you? Or is Wayne taller than Yeah, Nancy always was, just a little, well, I shouldn't say short, that isn't politically correct, but we now have a nice stool upstairs. Now maybe Wayne can speak into the microphone for her.
Well, I'll tell you the truth, folks. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. And I believe that in the excellence that Steve was talking about, Nancy and I both share the love for the children, and we want to see the children learn And the only way they can learn is to have a good library to go to pick up the books and see what is going on in the past, present, and what's going to go on in the future. And we believe in the generations that will follow us, that they will take advantage of what we're doing here. We're just normal, everyday working people. Some of you have been to our shop, you've seen us putting on, Nancy and I both putting on tires from day to day. And we think that there's a lot of working people out here that will support this kind of a thing to see that excellence continues. And we'd like to give you a gift of $1,000 to show our appreciation.
Well, I can hardly really find words to thank Nancy for a lot of things. Well, I'll let our board president have almost the last word.
I don't know, I was beginning to think there was no room on this program for a liberal Democrat. But I made it, I'm However, I will refrain from entering into that. On behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Monon Township Public Library, I'd like to welcome you all to your library and express our appreciation to the people of this community for all their support and patience during the long rebuilding process. We have local businessmen. Larry Annis down there was saving cardboard boxes for us when we discovered we had to have boxes to load our books. We had people load books, unload books, shelve books, bring cookies even in for those persons who were doing the hard labor. This was truly a community effort, and would that they could do so good in the big city of Washington, D.C., but they work on it, and that's the main thing. We are pleased that we hope that you are pleased with the library, we sure are, and we hope even more that you will use it. Do come here. The books aren't going to do anybody any good if they just sit there on the shelf. All of this is a result of many hours of teamwork and I guess planning. And when you talk about work and planning, you have to talk about Pat Raver. I mean, this is the lady right here that carried the burden. And there were days when I would come in here in the cold winters and she would have on 3 sweaters, a coat, boots, and a hat, and plaster in her hair. And one day she was walking sideways, mumbling, "We've got to keep the library open, we've got to keep the library open." And I said, "Pat, why don't we go out to lunch today?" Or someplace warm. Anyway, the board would like to just give you a little token of our appreciation. And Jean, you want to? We just thought we'd like to remember you, something that came from the warm lands of the tropics, hopefully. And thank you. She really was the person who was our guiding light throughout this whole thing. It's for that position, and we're impressed with her background in library work. Also, her husband is a resident of the community now too, along with the rest of their family. He's worked here for some years. She came to this job with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of ideas. She and Pat are working well, I think, on programs for the future for the library. And so do take a minute and introduce yourself to Pat, or Joe if you would. Actually, the work and planning on this board started many years ago, and I was kind of aghast when I came on the board, and everybody that had really said, "Let's go, go, go," went off the board. It was Shaker Heights, my step. No, I got some of those too. Son-in-law, I guess he is. And Dr. Kenny Smith and Kitty Swigert. They were all the forerunners of the board that you see here today, with the exception, I think, Linda, were you on the board at that time when you made the decision? But we kind of looked around and 3 of them were gone. However, that was okay. Some of those folks were responsible for, I guess, actually having the foresight to realize that in 1914, a building that would serve those folks, that's fine, but it isn't going to be satisfactory 8 years later. They started adding money to a library improvement fund. And so by the time we get around to really digging a hole in the ground, we had a sizable nest egg because of their advanced planning, and we certainly appreciate that. They were very careful managers. We've built our library here, and people through the centuries have built libraries. They're supposed to house the wisdom of the past and the sparks of knowledge for the future. Our new ideas come from, we hope, the written word. The words that many libraries used to put above their door, you see it, I guess, on pictures of those libraries of ancient Greece. One that I remember in particular said, "Libraries are medicine chests for the soul." And I thought how true. Sometimes on those dark, dim days, the silent servants wait. There was also another inscription above a library door that said, "Books are food for the soul." And I thought that is also true. You come sometimes and we say we feast on books and the knowledge of others. I also read one that I thought was very interesting. It said the amount of gossip in a house decreases when the number of books increase. I thought, okay, maybe that's true too. Well, we have plenty of everything for you today. We have food for the soul and all the books around. And we also have lots of good food for the tummy. So we invite you to partake of both as you travel around and explore our library. And thank you very much for coming. We're very pleased. Thank you.
Well, we have something that we think is going to be very entertaining. We have at least part of the North Flight Mahalas. I'm not sure just how many. And they're going to do a little song called The Library Rap.
Bob denies that these are the Bahama outfits.
I thought I might tell you how I got this little song. It wasn't my brainchild, but our library network did this as a radio spot. They had a band record this as a radio spot to use during National Library Week a few years ago. So when we started planning this, I remembered that. And I said to my friend Dennis Lawson, hi Dennis, he's the administrator of our library network. I said, gosh, could I have a cassette of that, because that is such a cute little song. I think the people would enjoy it. Then I told Julie about it, and I told the kids they could dress up any way they wanted to. So I'm real anxious to hear the library rap.
You can find it at the library. You can find it. You can find it.
The library has the books that tell you how to do from pops to make your first million. Read a story to your little children. Now you can just do what we say. Science and math, history. College vacation, where to go? Films, movies, picture to show. Try a romance, bring a tear to your eye. Try the latest science file.
You can find it. You can find it. You can find it at the library. You can find it. You can find it. probably everybody knows the name of this.
John Johns from Monon. I'm Jim Folks from Reynolds. Rodney Howard from Monon. Jed Krantz from Reynolds.
Carrie Kurtz from Reynolds. Holly Miller from Reynolds. Julia Woodcock from Monon.
Okay. Kind of fun to see something like that. It would have been fun to do it, but I didn't think the rest of the board would go along with it. The last thing on the program is refreshments. And if you'll give us just a few minutes, you can look around the library. We'll soon have our refreshments set up in here. I would like to thank Gary Wood for baking a cake for us and decorating it. Our servers will be Jane Stewart and Francis Stewart, Sarah Horton, Mary Horton, and my granddaughter Cheryl Medley. I'd just like to say also to thank Current Literature Club ladies and Tri Kappa ladies and the board for all the cookies which they have donated, and some other people in the community also. Current Literature was the club that years ago initially began a drive to have a library in Monon at all. So we're real happy to have some of them. Well, Francis was a member of Current Literature and also on the Leasing Corporation, and we're glad we have Current Literature involvement still in the library. On display upstairs, we have scrapbooks and various things from library history and also a little Monon history. You might enjoy looking at that. We also have a display from the Indiana State Library of talking books and braille materials and some other interesting materials for people who have impaired vision. So you can look at all of that today. And that will also be here for a few weeks yet. So if you don't have time to look at it today, or if you know people who need help with their reading, that will be here for people to use for quite a while yet. I think that just about concludes the purpose.
Hi, Jane. Hi, Sarah.
Sarah's
Near his office. And he brought it in.
Hi, Tracy. Hi, Emma.
You say hi? Well, that's part of Michelle.